The studio lights were still warm on Scott Voss's skin as the cameras went dark. The applause light blinked off, and a soft hum filled the air, the buzz of producers wrapping up another primetime broadcast. Scott adjusted his tie, flashed his signature smile one last time at the floor crew, and stepped away from the anchor desk. To millions of Californians, he was the man who delivered the truth with poise and confidence. At home, he was the perfect husband with the perfect wife. At least, that's what everyone believed. Scott, a voice called from behind. It was Mark Bennett, his longtime colleague, and one of the few people Scott trusted in the cutthroat world of broadcast news. Mark's expression wasn't his usual playful smirk. It was tight, uneasy. He walked quickly, glancing at his phone as though holding something toxic. "You got a second? This might sound crazy." Scott raised an eyebrow. "Mark, if this is about the Lakers, I'm not in the mood to argue tonight." But Mark didn't laugh. Instead, he turned the phone around. The glow of the screen revealed a dating profile. The woman's photo was crisp, bright, and impossible to mistake. Long brown hair, piercing blue eyes, and that unmistakable dimpled smile. Scott's heart gave a violent thump. The profile name read, Maya Fit_LA. Age, 35. Fitness trainer. Interests, travel, luxury, staying active, and living dangerously. Scott's throat tightened. The photo wasn't just similar, it was her. Megan, his wife. Mark lowered his voice. "Scott, this looks like Megan. Tell me this isn't." "Stop." Scott forced a laugh, but it cracked halfway out of his mouth. "That's not her. Someone's catfishing with her pictures. Happens all the time, right?" But even as he said it, his stomach churned. He knew Megan was a fitness trainer. He knew those photos weren't stolen. They were the same glossy shots she posted daily on Instagram for her 50,000 followers. Mark looked at him carefully, as if measuring whether to push further. "I thought so too. But look, she's using the same captions. The same phrases she posts. No excuses, only results." "Scott, that's her." Scott felt the studio shrink around him. The laughter of a producer across the room sounded distant, muffled, like underwater noise. He swallowed hard, forcing his face back into the practiced calm of a news anchor. "Maybe it's just, I don't know, some troll. Megan would never." Mark's silence said everything. The drive home was a blur. Neon lights smeared against the windshield, and Scott's hands gripped the wheel tighter than he realized. His mind replayed every moment of the past few years, anniversary dinners, vacations, the way Megan kissed him goodbye before his nightly broadcasts. Perfect. Untouchable. And yet, the image of that dating profile wouldn't leave him. When he stepped into the house, the familiar scent of Megan's lavender candles hit him. The living room was spotless, a Pinterest board come to life. Plush throw pillows, curated decor, a framed wedding photo of them smiling on a Malibu beach. Scott lingered on that photo, his chest tightening. Upstairs, laughter echoed faintly. Megan's voice. She was on a video call, speaking fast, her tone light and playful. He froze at the bottom of the stairs, straining to hear. A man's laugh answered her from the other end. Scott's heart thudded so hard it felt like it might break his ribs. He stepped forward, silently, but the creak of the wooden stairs stopped him. Megan's laughter cut off. "Scott, is that you?" He cleared his throat, forcing steadiness. "Yeah, just got home." Her door shut quietly. The house grew still. Scott stood in the dark hallway, staring at the closed door, the glow of light slipping through its crack. His mind spun with questions, with panic. He wanted to believe it was all innocent, that Mark was wrong. But deep inside, something had already shattered. And he knew tonight would not end with sleep. The morning light spilled through the wide glass windows of their modern California home. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, and Megan moved gracefully from counter to fridge in her workout leggings, humming to herself. She looked like the picture of health, the perfect fitness influencer, the kind of woman strangers envied and followers adored. Scott sat at the table, watching her. Every move seemed normal. Every smile was the same one she'd flashed at him for years. Yet the seed of suspicion planted last night gnawed at his chest. His mind replayed the faint sound of that man's laughter through her door. He tried to shake it. Don't overthink. Don't become paranoid. Maybe Mark was wrong. Maybe it was some scammer using her photos. But paranoia had its own gravity, and Scott was already falling. When Megan left for her morning training session, Her gym bag slung over her shoulder, Scott stayed behind. He stared at the quiet house, the silence pressing against his ears. And then his eyes landed on her iPad, left charging on the kitchen counter. It felt like the device was staring back at him, daring him. His palms grew damp. Don't. You'll regret this. She deserves your trust. You'll look pathetic, desperate, weak. But another voice cut in, darker, colder. What if you're already the fool? What if she's laughing at you right now? Scott picked up the iPad. His thumb hesitated over the home button. The screen lit up, no passcode required. Megan always synced her devices, laptop, phone, iPad, through iCloud. That thought struck him like lightning. Heart pounding, he tapped the Safari app. Autofill suggested an unfamiliar site, a dating platform. His chest tightened. With a trembling breath, he clicked. The login fields filled automatically, her email, her password. One press, and he was inside. The screen bloomed with messages. Dozens of conversations. Photos he had never seen before. Megan in hotel rooms, in workout outfits, smirking at the camera in ways she never looked at him. His pulse roared in his ears as he scrolled. You're so much more fun than my husband. He's clueless, always buried in work. I could meet Friday night. I like living dangerously. The risk is the best part. Scott's fingers shook as he screenshotted every line. His vision blurred, rage and humiliation mixing until it was hard to breathe. His wife, the woman the world believed was the epitome of loyalty, discipline, and class, was mocking him, mocking their marriage, behind his back. He whispered into the empty room, his voice hoarse, God, it's real. His mind flooded with memories. Megan cheering for him at award nights. Megan posing with him on magazine covers. Megan promising she'd be waiting at home after every show. And now he could see the truth beneath the surface. A double life, carefully hidden in plain sight. Scott's hand tightened around the iPad until his knuckles went white. He wanted to smash it, to shatter the glass into 1,000 jagged pieces. But instead, he forced himself to breathe. Evidence. That was all that mattered now. He copied everything. Messages, photos, names. Each screenshot felt like another dagger, but also another weapon. When the garage door opened and Megan's car pulled in, Scott scrambled, locking the iPad and placing it back on the counter. His pulse still thundered in his throat as she walked in, all smiles, sweat glistening on her skin. Hey, babe, she said, tossing her keys into the bowl by the door. How was your morning? Scott forced a calm smile, though his insides were shaking. Quiet. Her eyes lingered on him for half a second, suspicious. Then she kissed him lightly on the cheek, grabbed a protein shake from the fridge, and walked upstairs. Scott stayed frozen at the table, his jaw tight, his nails digging into his palms under the table. He wasn't imagining things anymore. The truth was undeniable. And in that moment, a chilling certainty settled over him. His wife wasn't just living a double life. She was laughing at the man the world saw as untouchable. The glow of the iPad screen lit Scott's face in the dead of night. The house was silent, Megan asleep upstairs. He sat at the kitchen counter, the only sound the faint buzz of the refrigerator and the relentless pounding of his own heart. He had opened the account again. He told himself it was to be sure, to confirm what he saw earlier wasn't just a twisted mistake. But the deeper he scrolled, the less room there was for doubt. Dozens of conversations stretched back months. Different men, different names, different tones, some playful, some crude, some disturbingly intimate. Megan had mastered the art of double talk, fitness coach by day, temptress by night. Scott's eyes caught on one particular thread, the name saved as A. Rhodes. The messages were bold, careless. You're fire on TV tonight. Can't believe you have to go home to that boring man when you could be with me. He's too busy reading teleprompters to realize he's a joke. Trust me, sweetheart, your secret's safe with me. Scott's vision tunneled. His wife wasn't just cheating. She was betraying him with people who knew exactly who he was, who laughed about him, ridiculed him, while she joined in. Another chat blinked open. Henry C. Photos. Hotel reservations. Receipts for dinners charged to credit cards Scott had never seen. Megan had uploaded selfies in the mirror of a luxury suite, teasing, he thinks I'm at a girl's weekend. Scott's jaw tightened so hard it ached. He saved everything, screenshots piling into a hidden folder. Names, dates, receipts. Every line of text felt like another knife twisting into him. And then he saw it. The message that gutted him more than any of the others. From Megan to one of her lovers. He's clueless. Always on air, always at work. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if he'd even notice if I disappeared. Scott whispered the words aloud, his voice trembling. If I disappeared, the humiliation burned hot, but under it, something colder took root. Focus. Control. He wasn't going to break down. Not now. Not like this. He was a man trained to keep composure under pressure. If he could deliver live news through earthquakes and scandals, he could handle this. Evidence. That was the key. Evidence meant power. He began building a digital trail, saving everything onto a hidden drive. Photos. Geolocations. Times she claimed she was at the gym, but was actually at a hotel 2 miles away. Each detail fell neatly into place, like bricks in a wall he was building between them. But as he worked, a new dread stirred. Megan wasn't just cheating on him. She was reckless, arrogant enough to involve men with reputations to lose. That meant when this story broke, it wouldn't just destroy his marriage. It could blow up his career, his public image, everything he had built. He leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, the weight pressing down on his chest. For the first time, Scott wasn't sure if he was angry at her betrayal or terrified of the fallout. A creak on the stairs snapped his attention back. Footsteps. He scrambled, shutting the iPad, tucking the hard drive into his briefcase. Megan's silhouette appeared in the dim hallway, her voice soft and sleepy. Scott, you're still up? He forced his face into calm shadow, the mask he wore every night on live television. Couldn't sleep, just reviewing notes for tomorrow's show. She lingered, narrowing her eyes slightly, but then shrugged, turning back upstairs. Scott waited until the sound of the bedroom door clicked shut. His pulse still pounded as he whispered to himself, a vow that was equal parts pain and fury. You think you're untouchable. You think you're smarter than me. But I promise you, Megan, you're going to regret underestimating me. The following days were a blur of smiling faces and forced laughter. On camera, Scott Voss was flawless as ever, the anchor America trusted, the calm, confident man guiding viewers through the chaos of the world. He shook hands, exchanged jokes with producers, charmed guests. But behind the polished smile, his mind was elsewhere. At home, he played the doting husband. How was class today? You look amazing. He even lit candles at dinner, pouring her favorite wine. Megan smiled back, unsuspecting, as if nothing in the world could touch their picture-perfect life. And while she laughed across the table, Scott's phone buzzed quietly in his pocket. The notification wasn't from work. It was from a dating app, the same one she used. Scott had created a profile the night before, under a new name, Daniel Cross. Handsome, confident, adventurous, everything Megan's lovers seemed to be in her eyes. The photo was stock, generic enough to pass, but appealing enough to catch attention. He had written the bio carefully, sprinkling in the phrases she loved. Risk-taker, living for the moment, fitness-driven. It hadn't taken long. When Megan's profile appeared, Scott's chest tightened. He hesitated only a second before swiping right. Within minutes, it was a match. Now, as she sipped her wine across from him, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced down, smiled faintly, and flipped it over. Scott's stomach twisted, but he forced his grin wider. Everything okay? Yeah, she said casually. Just a client. But he knew better. Later that night, when she disappeared upstairs for her bath, Scott sat on the couch, iPad in hand, his fake persona typing out the first words to his wife. Daniel Cross. You look like trouble, in the best way. Her reply came faster than his pulse. Maya_fit_LA, and you look like someone who can handle it. Scott stared at the glowing words, every muscle in his body tense. His fingers moved carefully, weaving a conversation designed to peel back every layer of her betrayal. He asked questions. She answered eagerly. She told Daniel she loved adventure, that her husband was safe, boring, predictable, that she wasn't ready to settle for a life where every night ended the same way. Every word slashed at him, but he pressed on, his face stone cold. Finally, he asked it, the question that would brand itself into his mind forever. Daniel, but what about your husband? Doesn't he suspect anything? For a moment, no response. His pulse hammered in his throat. Then it came. Maya_fit_LA. Husband is husband. But the soul craves adventure. Scott read it twice, 3 times, each repetition burning deeper. He felt something inside him snap, not with the chaos of rage, but with the precision of a man who had just found his enemy's weak spot. He saved the screenshots, sat in the dim living room, staring at the blue glow of betrayal spelled out in her own words. Upstairs, Megan hummed a tune, blow-drying her hair, oblivious. Scott whispered into the silence, his voice flat and cold. Game on. By day, Scott still played his role flawlessly. California trusted his voice to deliver the truth every evening at 7 o'clock, and he gave it to them with the same steady confidence as always. The audience saw no cracks, no signs of the storm brewing inside. But at night, Scott became something else entirely. The dining room had transformed into a war room. Laptops, external drives, manila folders stuffed with printouts, screenshots of messages, timestamps of hotel check-ins, screenshots of bank statements pulled from synced devices. Every piece of evidence sat neatly cataloged, a growing arsenal against the woman he once thought was his forever. It wasn't just about Megan anymore. The deeper Scott dug, the more he realized this wasn't simply infidelity. It was recklessness, arrogance, and the audacity to involve powerful men. Men with careers, with reputations, with everything to lose. When he found the name Adam Rhodes, a congressman from the district, Scott almost laughed at the sheer insanity of it. Then came Henry Caldwell, a plastic surgeon whose face appeared regularly on billboards across Los Angeles. These weren't nobodies. They were names that mattered. And Megan, oblivious, had tied herself, and him, right into their scandals. Scott knew he needed help. That's when he called Victoria Steele. She was sharp, ruthless, one of the most respected attorneys in California divorce law. When Scott laid out the evidence across her oak desk, Victoria leaned back, steepling her fingers, her eyes glinting with the thrill of the hunt. You've got her cornered, she said. With the prenup you signed, if adultery is proven, she walks away with nothing. No house, no money, not a cent. All you have to do is time this right. Scott nodded slowly. Timing is everything. Victoria slid one of the folders toward herself, skimming through the screenshots. And if we hit this strategically, it won't just end your marriage. It'll end her lifestyle, her brand, her little empire of lies. Do you want quiet, or do you want loud? Scott's jaw clenched. He thought of Megan's smirk, the way she typed about her boring husband, the way she laughed behind his back. He thought of his public image, the faithful anchor, the moral compass. Loud, he said, his voice low but steady. The world deserves to know the truth. Victoria smiled like a wolf. Then we plan the hit carefully. The moment she's served divorce papers will coincide with maximum exposure. Public, undeniable, irreversible. For the first time since the nightmare began, Scott felt clarity. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. That night, back at home, Megan was on the couch scrolling through Instagram, posting a filtered photo captioned #PowerCoupleGoals. Scott watched her from the hallway, her phone screen glowing in the dim room. She had no idea her husband was already dismantling her entire life, piece by piece. Scott stepped into his study, locked the door, and whispered to himself, the words vibrating like a vow. When the blow lands, she won't see it coming. The weekend Megan claimed she'd be at a spa retreat began like any other. She kissed Scott on the cheek, tossed her overnight bag into the back of her white SUV, and drove away humming to herself. To her, it was just another excuse, another weekend of lies wrapped in yoga mats and wellness hashtags. To Scott, it was the beginning of the end. The moment her car disappeared down the street, he pulled out his phone. A locksmith's VIN rolled up within the hour. By afternoon, every lock in the house was changed. Megan's keycard, the same one she waved so casually each morning, would no longer open the door. Her clothes, her shoes, her endless racks of designer outfits and fitness gear, Scott packed them meticulously into boxes, stacking them like artifacts of a life already gone. The house grew lighter with each bag removed, as if shedding her presence before she even knew it. In the study, the printer hummed, spitting out page after page. Evidence packets, screenshots of messages, hotel bills, even geolocation pins. Some were labeled for Victoria, some for the process server. But the most damning set, the curated highlight reel of her betrayal, was destined for the public. He drafted an anonymous email blast. Recipients, key journalists, gossip sites, watchdog bloggers, even a few political rivals of Congressman Adam Rhodes. Every file zipped neatly, every timestamp matching Meghan's betrayals. It was surgical. It was merciless. That night, Scott met with his boss, Robert Hale, in the quiet of the Channel 7 newsroom. The walls hummed with muted televisions, headlines scrolling, stories breaking, but Robert's focus was entirely on Scott's face. "You're sure about this?" Robert asked, folding his arms. "Going public with your personal life, it's not something you walk back from." Scott's expression was carved from stone. "This isn't just personal. She's involved with public figures, men with influence. The audience deserves the truth. People need to see that betrayal, no matter who commits it, has consequences." Robert studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You've built a reputation for integrity, Scott. Maybe this is exactly what the public needs right now. A reminder that trust still matters." He leaned back in his chair. "If you're doing this, do it on air. Primetime. No filters." Scott's pulse quickened. "You're giving me the green light." Robert's eyes sharpened. "I'm giving you the stage. Just be prepared. The fallout won't just hit her. It'll hit everyone connected." Scott exhaled, steady but electric inside. That was exactly the point. When he returned home that night, the house was silent. Meghan was still gone, wrapped up in the arms of someone else. But Scott didn't feel the familiar ache anymore. Instead, he stood in the center of their immaculate living room, looking at the wedding photo still hanging on the wall. He didn't see betrayal. He saw an artifact, something soon to be history. Scott whispered into the stillness, almost like a news anchor rehearsing his lines. "On Monday, 7 p.m., the world will know. And Meghan, your empire of lies collapses live." Monday evening, Los Angeles traffic roared outside, but inside the Voss home, silence ruled. Meghan dropped her gym bag by the door and pulled her phone out, scrolling absent-mindedly through Instagram notifications. She barely noticed the knock at the door until it came again, sharper this time. She opened it to find a courier holding a slim envelope. "For Mrs. Voss." Her brows knit together. "Thank you," she said, confused, shutting the door behind her. She tore open the envelope and slid out a single card. On it, in bold black letters, "Turn on Channel 7, California News tonight." Her stomach fluttered. A joke? A prank? She tossed the card aside and grabbed the remote. The screen flickered to life just as the evening broadcast began. And there he was, Scott Voss, her husband, but not the calm, smiling anchor she was used to. Tonight, his eyes burned with something she had never seen before, controlled fury. "Good evening, California," he began, his voice steady, but colder than ice. "Tonight, I'm not just here as your anchor. I'm here as a man, a husband, and as someone who believes the truth deserves the light." Meghan froze. On the screen behind Scott, graphics shifted, photos, screenshots, messages. Her photos, her messages, her words. "This is my wife, Meghan Voss," Scott continued. "Fitness trainer, influencer, and the woman who vowed to honor her marriage. But behind the public smile, she lived a different life. A life of deception, multiple affairs, lies stacked on lies. And tonight, I can no longer remain silent." The broadcast cut to evidence, direct quotes from her chats, her selfies in hotel rooms, messages mocking him. "He's always at work. He'll never know." Meghan's face drained of color. "No," she whispered, grabbing the remote, her hand trembling. She fumbled with the buttons, desperate to shut the TV off, but her own voice echoed back at her from the speakers. Scott's voice hardened. "I don't share this out of spite. I share it because betrayal corrodes not just marriages, but trust itself. And trust is the cornerstone of everything, relationships, communities, even the news you watch every night. Without it, we're lost." The camera zoomed in, his eyes locking with millions of viewers across California. "I will not pretend anymore. I will not protect a lie. Tonight, I choose truth. And I want every person watching to remember, betrayal has no excuse." The broadcast ended not with the usual upbeat outro, but with silence. The screen cut back to the Channel 7 logo, heavy and still. Meghan stood frozen in the living room, the card from the envelope trembling in her hand. Outside, the faint sound of a neighbor's TV carried the same broadcast. She realized with horror, it wasn't just her watching. Everyone was. She dropped the remote, her breath shallow, the walls closing in around her. Her phone lit up on the counter. Notifications exploding. Comments. Tags. Messages. Her world was already burning, and she hadn't even moved from the couch. By Tuesday morning, California wasn't just buzzing, it was erupting. Scott's broadcast had detonated like a bomb, and the shockwaves spread across every screen, every phone, every conversation. Headlines blared. News anchor exposes wife's double life on live TV. Congressman Rhodes linked to infidelity scandal. Plastic surgeon Dr. Caldwell caught in explosive affair allegations. Talk radio hosts couldn't get enough. Morning shows dissected every screenshot. Clips of Scott's speech went viral on TikTok, spliced with dramatic music, amassing millions of views overnight. And then came the fallout. Congressman Adam Rhodes held a press conference in a desperate attempt at damage control. Sweat glistened on his forehead as he stumbled through a half-hearted denial, claiming the screenshots were taken out of context. But the public wasn't buying it. By the evening, his own party had issued a statement condemning his breach of trust, and his campaign manager quit on live television. Poll numbers tanked. Dr. Henry Caldwell fared no better. His Beverly Hills clinic's phone lines lit up with cancellations. Angry ex-patients flooded Yelp and Google reviews with one-star ratings, calling him untrustworthy and disgusting. By Thursday, his fiancée, a model with 500,000 Instagram followers, posted a video in tears. "I can't marry a liar. It's over." The clip racked up millions of views, burying his reputation beneath a tidal wave of ridicule. But no one took the brunt harder than Meghan. Her Instagram, once a shrine of admiration and envy, became a battlefield. The latest post, #PowerCoupleGoals, was flooded with venom. Power couple? More like power fraud. How could you humiliate your husband like that? Unfollowed. Done. Within 48 hours, her follower count plummeted by tens of thousands. Brands that once paid her for glowing endorsements quietly erased her from their pages. The boutique fitness studio where she taught morning classes sent a curt email terminating her contract. At the grocery store, whispers followed her down every aisle. At the gym, former friends turned their backs. Even her own family group chat went silent after her mother's last message. "I don't recognize you anymore." Meghan sat in her living room, blinds drawn tight, phone buzzing relentlessly on the table. Each ping was another dagger: news alerts, hate comments, business cancellations. She covered her ears, but the noise wouldn't stop. And the cruelest part? Every station, every headline, every meme. They all replayed the same moment. Scott's voice, steady, unflinching. Betrayal has no excuse. Her empire wasn't crumbling. It had already collapsed. By the end of the week, there was no safe corner left for Megan Voss. Her once glossy name had become a punchline. Morning radio shows mocked her #PowerCoupleGoals post with cruel skits. YouTubers dissected her lies frame by frame, comparing her cheerful influencer videos with the venomous chats Scott had revealed. Even late-night comedians got in on the scandal. Turns out the only workout Megan Voss was really offering was cardio in hotel rooms. The audience howled. Her sponsors were gone. Contracts canceled. Her carefully crafted brand was radioactive. Fitness apps pulled her image. Local gyms replaced her posters overnight. And her social media presence bled followers faster than she could refresh the screen. By Friday, she'd lost over 70,000 fans, and with them, her income, her status, her illusion. But it wasn't just Meghan who fell. Congressman Adam Rhodes had become untouchable, not in the way he used to boast, but in the worst way possible. His office phones rang nonstop, with angry voters demanding his resignation. His opponents seized the moment, painting him as a hypocrite. On the courthouse steps, protesters waved signs with Scott's quote, "Betrayal has no excuse." By the weekend, Rhodes' career wasn't just damaged, it was finished. Dr. Henry Caldwell found himself equally destroyed. His fiancée's viral breakup video had shattered what little credibility he clung to. Once a respected surgeon, he was now a walking scandal. Clients canceled consultations, tabloids splashed his face across covers with headlines like, "Doctor of Lies." In the span of days, he had lost both his professional reputation and his personal life. And then there was Meghan, alone. Her family refused to take her calls. Friends blocked her number. Former clients publicly denounced her, saying they'd been duped by a fraud. The house she once posed in for Instagram photos was now a cold, empty shell, her belongings boxed in the garage, her key useless in the lock. Scott had changed. Meanwhile, Scott walked into the newsroom each evening to standing applause. His ratings soared. Emails flooded in from viewers calling him the anchor of honesty, a man of courage. Social media crowned him a symbol of integrity in an era of lies. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The contrast was enough. One man stood taller than ever. The others, his betrayers, lay in ruins, their lives dismantled not by his rage, but by their own arrogance brought into the light. And yet, as Scott sat alone in his office late one night, staring at the glow of the city outside, he couldn't shake a single thought. This was just the beginning. 6 months later, the world had moved on, but not forgotten. Every evening, millions still tuned in to California News Tonight. And every evening, Scott Voss sat beneath the studio lights, delivering the stories with the same steady voice that once exposed his own. But there was something new in his tone now, an edge of conviction, a weight that came from living the very truth he spoke about. The network had embraced it. A new slogan scrolled across the bottom of the screen. California News Tonight, truth above all. Viewers ate it up. Ratings soared. Sponsors lined up. But beyond the fame, there was something deeper. Scott was lighter, freer. No longer shackled by lies whispered in hotel rooms. No longer carrying the invisible weight of betrayal. His private life was quiet, almost peaceful, nights spent reading on the patio, mornings spent jogging along the coast. The wound Megan left still ached, but it was healing in the light of honesty. Megan, meanwhile, lived in shadow. She had retreated to a small rental apartment on the outskirts of the city, blinds perpetually closed. Her once vibrant social media accounts sat abandoned, followers dwindling to a fraction. When she did post, the comments were merciless. No brands, no clients, no family waiting by her side. The woman who once lived for attention now lived in the crushing silence of irrelevance. She had become a ghost in the very city that once celebrated her. Her former lovers hadn't fared better. Rhodes had resigned in disgrace, his name whispered as a cautionary tale in political circles. Caldwell, stripped of credibility, closed his clinic and left Los Angeles under a cloud of scandal. But Scott remained, not just as a survivor, but as a symbol. In his closing broadcast one Friday evening, he looked into the camera, his voice steady, carrying the weight of his journey. Trust, he said, isn't given, it's earned. And once broken, it leaves scars. But scars are proof of survival, proof that truth is stronger than lies. And for those who think betrayal can stay hidden, remember, the light always finds its way. The red light above the camera dimmed. The broadcast ended. Scott removed his earpiece, exhaled, and allowed himself a small, private smile. The storm was over, and in its wake, he had built something stronger. Scott Voss wasn't just the man who read the news anymore. He was the man who lived it, and proved, to everyone watching, that truth will always prevail.